Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Justin Rombough podcast. I am back once again, with my dad. This is our post-Christmas college football podcast. I welcome you all back to the show. Let's get started. So, the college football playoff, as you guys know, it's been a whole snooze fest. The first round, every game was double-digit victories by pretty much the team that was favored. The group of five bowls, as my dad likes to call it, the cheese ball bowls, whatever you want to call it, those games have been a lot more entertaining, to say the least. So we're recording this on Friday morning, and earlier this week, on Monday, one of the notable bowl games, Northern Illinois beat Fresno State 28-20 in double overtime in the Idaho Potato Bowl. That was played on Boise State's field. Boise State, as you know, is in the college football playoff. We'll get to them later. So that was an exciting game because a double overtime game, a lot more exciting than a double-digit victory. And then the next day, Tuesday, Christmas Eve, South Florida and San Jose State faced off in the Hawaii Bowl. We were watching it in Arizona, where we're at right now, and it was dark here, but it was light there because Hawaii's, 3 hours behind?
3 hours behind us.
3 hours behind. And it was a great game. It was back and forth the whole game. We were out doing DoorDash runs, but we were keeping track of it on our phones. And Dad, just what happened at the end of that game?
Well, it was really exciting. I had to take the next day off. It was just a bit much. So these, what I would call G5 bowls, are some of the most exciting games there are. They get in there, they got overtime. They have to kick the first overtime. They score, kick the extra point. The second overtime, they have to score, go for two. And then after that, it's a bunch of 2-point conversions. And on the fifth one, San Jose USF made their 2-point conversion, and South Florida didn't, and San Jose State didn't make it. So that's why that went 5 overtimes. And then last night they topped, and that was a record for the most overtimes in bowl history. And then last night Toledo and Pitt go 6 overtimes. Same thing. Toledo gets in the sixth overtime, gets the 2-point conversion, and Pitt missed it. So it's exhausting, but it's been a lot of fun. And so these G5 Bowls are really gaining a lot of notoriety with these exciting games. And hopefully the playoffs get a little more exciting. They've got some good matchups coming up. But Indiana did score late against Notre Dame, a couple of scores. But if they made the 2, recovered the onside, they could have tied it up. But it was just too late. But that was the closest one. All the others were wipeouts. So hopefully the playoffs, because I know everybody's really focused in on the playoffs and everything, but these other G5 Bowls are a lot of fun, and I'm sure that there's plenty of them today. I'm sure we'll be busy, possibly some more overtimes.
Yeah, so today, there's a slate of games, and then this weekend there's a slate of games. One of the games today, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech. That's one that we wanted to mention. Earlier in the season, Vanderbilt, they finished the season 6-6, but obviously earlier in the year. In fact, the day that we recorded the podcast with Alex, Vanderbilt beat Georgia, and the fans stormed the field, and they took the goalpost. And there's been a series of goalposts that have been taken down as the year has gone on, which is one of the main reasons we love college football. Is you don't really see goalposts getting torn down in Jerry's World or Lambeau Field or anything like that. So, Vanderbilt, they're one of my favorite teams playing today, but as we'll get to I'm looking forward to the Saturday games more. We'll get to some of those. But did you have some thoughts on that Vanderbilt goalpost?
Well, yes, just to add a little humor to it here, you guys. I know we get rattled off these stats and everything, but just to spice it up, a little humor on that is the average age, or the ones that tore that goalpost down, would probably be males ages 18 to 22, right? So when we were doing our Packer broadcast, they were playing Alabama that day. And I thought about it, and I said, when them tearing it down, if I had participated in it, I would have a Guinness Book of World Record of being the oldest person to tear a goalpost down and dump it in a river. So that would be kind of fun, but I didn't do it because they committed several felonies, but it was a one-off because it's so rare that, Vandy beats Alabama, and it hadn't happened in years. They one-offed it and didn't arrest anybody, but it was a lot of fun thinking about it. And the firefighters in Nashville had to haul that goalpost out of the river. Can you imagine them telling their families after the game? But anyway, it was fun thinking about it, but I would have been exhausted to attempt that. But that's the thing about college ball. With the younger crowd, they do things like that, like run out on the field and that. In the pro game, they don't do that. So I'm sure it's going to be a rare thing that would happen again when you start dumping them in rivers and obstructing traffic in the street like that. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a coincidence we were doing the Packer broadcast during that game. So little humor, but it's fun to think about it, but I don't think in actuality I would do it.
Yeah. And then so looking ahead to this weekend, we have a Big 12 and ACC matchup between Iowa State and Miami. Now, Iowa State, they started off the season great. A couple of me and my buddies went to Ames for a game against UCF. That's when they beat them, come from behind victory. Rocco Becht had amazing plays down the stretch. And they started the season, I believe, 7-0 for the first time since the early 1900s. And then they kind of had some losses. That's kind of what happened with the Big 12 all year. Teams would get off to a great start and then lose. And it was just kind of flip-flopped the whole year in the Big 12. And then Miami, their story is, I mean, in the ACC, they did what they could. They lost a couple games, and it kind of took them out of the playoff spot. Their fans were really upset, but I mean, at the end of the day, 12 teams get in, and someone's not going to be happy. We saw it with the BCS era. We saw it with the college football playoff era. And now they're in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So Miami's favored by 3.5. I think that'll be one of the best bowl games, a non-college football playoff bowl game. What are your thoughts for the Iowa State-Miami game? Miami is favored by 3.5.
Well, I'm really excited about it. I know Miami just missed the playoffs, but so did Iowa State. They were basically runner-up in the Big 12 and that. But we explained in one of our earlier podcasts that you got to be a good sport about it. You know, some teams are going to get beat out. You just have to deal with it. And I know there have been a lot of complaints and that. And it's like, hey, guys, just got to step back and take a chill and know you're going to miss it. But that's still a good opportunity for Miami. I think it's in Orlando, that bowl is. And it's and of course Iowa State coming off that loss to ASU, they're going to be really ready to play. A lot of times you lose a game like that, you're really focused. And Miami really had a good season. They narrowly missed the playoffs, and I think Iowa State will probably win that game. But Miami's going to put on a show. You could have another one of these multiple overtime. We're getting used to those now, so maybe that'll add a little more excitement than we've already had in these G5 bowls. So every game could be a real fun one, and so I wouldn't discount either team. But I'm going to go with the Cyclones.
I think I'd have to go with the Cyclones too, plus 3.5. And so I think for those games, it kind of really just depends on the mindset, because Miami could either not really care and Iowa State kind of runs away with the victory, or Miami can be pissed off and blow out Iowa State, or maybe it could be a good game, but I guess time will tell. So for the next game, this game is the Arizona Bowl, and it was previously sponsored by Barstool Sports, but this year there's a new sponsor in town, D-O-double-G Snoop Dogg, and he has, he's one of the most well-known guys in the country, and this game is between Miami of Ohio and Colorado State. Miami of Ohio is favored by 2.5. Even though this is kind of a lesser bowl, I know you are a little bit biased being from Tucson, and it is a Tucson bowl, so we do like to rep the brand, as you can tell. And it's been really good games in the past. There was a good game that we went to, actually, between Toledo and Wyoming that was really close. This one, what are your thoughts for the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl?
Well, I'm really excited about it. It's the newest bowl, and they've got basically a bowl moratorium because there's so many bowls now, they're maxed out. But Tucson did squeeze in and get one because they did lose the Copper Bowl, which is now the Rate Bowl in Phoenix. And so they got a bowl, and they've been hanging in there and getting more fans there. They've had these exciting games. Wyoming Invitational, because Wyoming 3 times recently, and they've all been kick a field goal at the end or score in the last play, overtime, stuff like that. It's been really exciting down there in Tucson, and it hopefully gets some more notoriety in that. And I think Colorado State, which is Wyoming's rival, gets to go. And hopefully they draw well, because Wyoming poured in from Laramie. It was like South Laramie there in previous years, and maybe Fort Collins will come down too. And, of course, Miami there in Ohio and that. So hopefully it's a good game, maybe another shootout, and add more excitement to the Arizona Bowl. And Snoop Dogg's a good sponsor. I'm sure that'll help draw fans. It's a good bowl.
I think for my pick, I'm taking Colorado State plus 2.5. What do you say?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to be really close. Those MAC teams are really good. Look at Toledo pulling out that last 6 overtime last night. So, again, I have the utmost respect for the MAC, too. And, again, I like to call these all the G5 Bowls. And it could be another shootout. So, I'm going to go with I'll go with Colorado State, but it's really going to be close.
And then so next up on the slate, a all Big 12 bowl game, the Alamo Bowl. We were there last year for the Oklahoma-Arizona game. That was a really exciting bowl game. This year it is the BYU Cougars versus Colorado State, Colorado, excuse me. And Colorado is favored by 4. Obviously they have the Heisman winning, playing both sides of the ball. Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. I don't believe they've declared for the draft quite yet. I'll have to check into that, but all Big 12 bowl because of the Pac-12 rule, because Colorado State was in the Pac-12 and now they're in the Big 12.
Colorado.
Colorado, yeah. And then, so for that game, what are your thoughts for the all Big 12 Alamo Bowl?
Well, it's kind of interesting. The winner could claim they're co-champs of the Big 12 because those are the 2 teams that got beat out on the tiebreakers. We predicted correctly that 4 teams would tie for the Big 12 title, and it did happen. 4 did tie, but we didn't expect the ones to get there. But nevertheless, they did tie, and very good teams. And we underestimated Colorado in our predictions. We said 5-7, and the CU fans were a little upset. But again, they're very powerful, and BYU is very powerful. We were in Provo, and we saw them. They beat us up pretty bad, and so both teams are really good. And it could be a shootout again, and because the teams are so tightly bunched up there in the Big 12, those teams are all really good, and so it could be another 6 overtime deal. So hopefully it's a close game, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. They'll both be motivated because they know they can really claim the co-championship.
I'm going against the Buffs. I'm not really a big Colorado fan, but I'll take BYU plus 4. I think it'll be a fun game. The Alamo Bowl has always got great games. What's your pick for that game?
I'll go CU by 2. It'll be overtime, 2 points. Get to the tiebreakers when they go to 2-point conversions. So I'm really going to pick a close one.
Yeah. Next up, so this is a rematch of last year's not the national championship game, but the Rose Bowl between Alabama and Michigan. Obviously, Michigan went on a phenomenal run last year, won the Rose Bowl. It's been a bit of a 360 for the whole program. I mean, they lost a bunch of players to the draft and to graduation. Jim Harbaugh went to the Chargers. And then Bama, on the other side of the field, they lost their coach. They had high expectations per usual. It is Alabama. And now they're in the ReliaQuest Bowl. And a lot of Bama fans, much like Miami fans, were upset that they got stiffed out of going to the college football playoff. And now they're playing Michigan. They're favored by 12.5. I think it'll be a game of, like I mentioned earlier with Miami, is Bama going to care enough to blow out Michigan by 12.5? I'm not sure. I'm taking Michigan plus 12.5. I think they'll come to play. I think it'll be a grinded out game. We could see Jalen Milroe just go off for maybe one last performance as a Alabama alum. What are your thoughts for the ReliaQuest Bowl?
Oh, I think Alabama's going to win the bowl. They usually they've had such an incredible tradition. They've won so many championships, and for them to miss it, it's a big deal. But usually they'll win the bowl. Like one time they missed the playoffs and then won the Citrus Bowl, I think it was. So I think they'll win and get a bowl trophy because they do have quite a number of trophies, but won 40, 50 bowls and 40 conference championships and 18 national championships. So they have plenty of championships, and they know they missed it, but they're going to come back and they'll get this. But Michigan's a good team too, but I think Michigan had a lot of graduation losses, I think, from last year, and that's why they kind of struggled in that. But Bama's kind of built up a little bit, and they had that Oklahoma loss, which cost them the playoff. Of course, Vandy lost too, but they didn't do very good against OU. But they're going to do better, and I think they'll win. But again, Michigan, you always got to give the other guy credit, and they could make it close too because of what we've seen this year. We could have another shootout again.
And speaking of absolute shootouts, this next game between Penn State and Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And we've seen in previous years, Boise State as an underdog in the Fiesta Bowl. We saw it against Oklahoma in 2007 where they came back, a great victory. One of the Boise State players that I believe maybe scored in that final play ended up doing a surprise proposal 17 years ago. They have that same uniform combo that they wore that game. They're going against the Nittany Lions, Penn State. Penn State, I mean, I knew it right when the selection showed. Their road to the Final Four, I knew it was going to be the easiest just because, I mean, they didn't have competition. Who did they play in the first round? They played...
Penn State did? Was it Tennessee?
Or they played... I don't know, but
Oh, it was it's SMU. They
yeah,
beat SMU
they played
in State
SMU.
College. Yeah, they wiped them out. Yeah.
And we knew it wasn't. I mean, SMU, they had a great year, but I knew Penn State was going to win. Everybody kind of knew that, and I believe they beat them 38-10. And now Boise State, they're coming in as the higher ranked seed, but Penn State is favored by 11. I mean, Penn State's going to win. I don't know if they'll cover. I think they will cover just because they're dominant. I mean, Ashton Genty's going to have a great game. But I'm taking Penn State going to the Final Four. What is your pick for that?
Yeah, I'm probably going with Penn State too. But say Genty, if he gets hot and starts rolling there, and if Penn State's always got a great defense, if Penn State stops him, they'll win big. But if he can run, they can stay in the game. And it's true, Boise State's pretty tough in that Fiesta Bowl. They did beat us in about 14, I think it was. So they've won some big games in the Fiesta Bowl. And they did that OU one they did with that. It was a 2-point conversion, I think, and the running back ran around and did propose to the cheerleader girlfriend there after the game, and they got married there. And but yeah, so I would predict Penn State to win, but you never know. Boise's right there, so yeah.
Now for this next matchup, another double-digit favorite, Texas against ASU in the Peach Bowl. Now, I think a big key to this game is the health of Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback. He's been dealing with ankle issues, oblique issues, and ASU, they've had an insane run, much like we did last year, going to the Alamo Bowl, going 10-3. They just came out of nowhere. They were predicted to go last in the Big 12 and went on an unbelievable run. I think their run stops on New Year's Day against Texas. Texas is favored by 13 points. I think if Quinn Ewers, if he's not looking good, I don't think he'll look too good in the first half. I think he'll get pulled and Arch Manning will come in if it's close. If Texas is up big, Arch Manning might come in regardless. But I think just if Quinn Ewers is not up to par, and Arch Manning he adds a running element to Texas. He's able to run, and obviously with the Manning blood, he's bound to be a great quarterback. So I think if it's close, we could see Manning come in the game. That's a big factor, but I really don't think it'll be close other than at the very start of the game. I think Texas is going to run away with it and win by more than 2 touchdowns. What do you say?
One thing is Cam Scadaboo, the ASU running back, he's just one big solid muscle. I mean, he ran over those Iowa State players, and I'm thinking Texas has a great defense too, just like Penn State. And they have to stop Cam, otherwise it could be just like with the Boise State game. And again, I think Texas is going to win, but if they can't stop Scadaboo, they'll stay in the game. And certainly with Boise State and ASU, the only Mountain Time Zone teams in there, it would be incredible for the time zone if they could both win. It would be incredible pride. There's only 6.7% of the population of the country is in the Mountain Time Zone. They're kind of overlooked by the other 3. So this would be huge for the whole Mountain Time Zone if those 2 can win. And but again, ASU's got to travel all the way to Atlanta, and they did win the Peach Bowl in 1970 against North Carolina, like 48-26 or so. So it's their first time in 54 years they've been there. So it's a big deal. Get to Atlanta, but Texas is huge. They got a huge defensive line and really tough. And of course, both those Qs having 2 quarterbacks makes it tricky because you might plan for one, it could stick the other in at halftime, switch quarterbacks at halftime, and throw ASU off, but if they don't stop Cam Scadaboo, ASU's got a chance, just like with Genty and Boise. But that'll be interesting, those 2 games. And hopefully they're close because we've had too many blowouts in the playoffs, and everybody's kind of concerned about that. And has some exciting games like the G5 games we've talked about earlier in the show.
And so, as you mentioned, we'll get to the transfer portal at the very end. But so, looking ahead to the last 2 games in the college football playoff, these ones I think will be a lot closer, and so do the experts think. Both of them are less than 3-point favorites. It'll be a close game. So we have the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. And in the Rose Bowl, the matchup, pretty much the game of the year, in my opinion, one of the games of the year is Ohio State and Oregon earlier in the year. I believe Oregon took that one. And this is a rematch. But in this rematch, Ohio State, according to ESPN, is favored by 2.5 over Oregon. And I think Oregon's going to win. I have Oregon winning, spoilers, over Georgia, beating Georgia in the national championship game. So I think Oregon will obviously take this in the Rose Bowl. But this, I think, will be the best game of the college football playoff because at the beginning of the year, I had Ohio State winning it all. But as the seasons progressed, Oregon's just looked like the most dominant team, even though they struggled a little bit early against Idaho. And in a couple of the earlier games, they've looked dominant every single game. Who do you see taking it in this Rose Bowl between Ohio State and Oregon?
Well, it is really tough to beat a team twice in 1 year. And Oregon is undefeated in that and a lot of pressure on them and that. And so I think Ohio State is favored, maybe probably because of that. And so, again, it is awfully tough. And if they had the seeding differently where teams weren't given auto bids based on conference championships, this game would have probably been played the next round in the Final Four instead of eight teams. There's Elite Eight now. So I'm going to have to go Ohio State, but again, another really close game. But Oregon is still really good, and they could still go undefeated and have that magical season because they've come so close to winning national championships. This might be their shot. But again, it's going to be really close, but real close.
And this is a rematch of the first college football playoff championship game when Ohio State beat Oregon. That was about 2015, so roughly going to be about 10 years ago. And I think the bias of Oregon still being in the Pac-12, or they were still in the Pac-12 and now they are in the Big Ten. So this is their golden opportunity to establish themselves as a dominant program in college football. Because as we've seen as Arizona fans, the Pac-12, Pac-10, we got no respect. It was all Big Ten, SEC, and it still is. So if Boise State can make an upset, if ASU can make an upset, if Oregon can make an upset, that'll get respect for these non-Big Ten or SEC teams. And so looking ahead to the last game of the college football playoff, New Year's Day, we got the Sugar Bowl, we got Georgia, Notre Dame. Georgia only favored by 2. I think one of the key elements is quarterback play for both teams. Riley Leonard on Notre Dame and Georgia. Carson Beck's been dealing with injury issues. He had that shoulder injury against Texas. And 2-point favorites Georgia is. What are your thoughts for that game?
Again, that's another game that would have been in a later round based on the seeding because Notre Dame kind of let Indiana off the hook at the end there and let a couple of late scores. That could, they got to be careful. Georgia's a lot tougher, and so, but Georgia's cue's out, and so it's going to be a really close game too. They're both very powerful, and again, close game. Probably go Georgia, but really close.
And as I mentioned, I think that it'll be Oregon over Georgia in the college football playoff. Do you have a prediction for how do you think it's going to turn out the rest of the way?
I think it will too. It'll be Oregon and Georgia. But again, the others always can make things interesting. This is college football, and it's really when the last place team predicted at the Big 12 win it all, anything can happen. So yeah, I mean it could be that, but I'm sure everybody's got their opinions on that, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think Oregon's going to squeeze it out, but it's going to be close.
And so to wrap up, I just wanted to give some thoughts on the transfer portal. So in terms of the transfer portal, I think it's really made college football a whole different sport. Even just looking at the college football games, Penn State, their backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, he went to Missouri for an alleged $1.5 million. And that's a key element because Penn State, we didn't see it in the first matchup against SMU because they were winning by a substantial margin. But we could see it against Boise State. If Penn State needs to have a new element, if Drew Aller's not really doing too well, they don't have that added element of Pribula's running ability. So I think that's a key loss for Penn State. But I think in general, for the transfer portal, we've been talking about it. I think it's just really hurting college football. It's not an amateur. It's semi-pro, even more than semi-pro, if that's even possible, just because these players are making millions of dollars. It's a year-to-year sport, as we've seen. Arizona can go from 10-3 to 4-8 just from losing a coach, losing a bunch of players to the portal. ASU can go from projected last to winning it all in the Big 12 based off of a bunch of guys coming in the transfer portal. It's kind of a year-to-year basis. It's all about money. It's always been all about money, but it's even more about recruiting, and it's more about just how much are we going to pay instead of how much do you like this school?
One thing I wanted to add is there's 4 schools that don't do the transfer portal. Of course, it's the 3 service academies, Army, Navy, and Air Force, because they're bound by their contract when they sign up. They serve in that branch of the military for 5 years afterwards. Some make a career of it, so they don't transfer. You never, they are always there. And Dabo Sweeney there at Clemson doesn't do the transfer portal either. He builds his players. He likes to build through recruiting and keep them all the way. And so those are the 4 teams. So it's like apples and oranges. All the others do transfer. And I really believe that they should only allow one-time transfer. One maybe didn't work out, try another place, but to go every year like this is just a bit much because, so many alums at these schools are so loyal to their school and they want to get a degree from their school and stay there all the time. They may be born in one city and that's where they're going to school, and be loyal, be true to your school, like the Beach Boys song in the early 60s. Be true to your school, maybe make one transfer if it doesn't work out, but not every year. Some of these guys are switching every year, and it makes it hard. Marshall, for example, had to forfeit their bowl berth against, I believe, Army, and Louisiana Tech went in their place because so many players from Marshall went in the portal. Can you imagine if all the playoff teams' players went in the portal? We couldn't even have the playoffs. So they really need to tone it down and allow them only one time, and because it's hurting college football. It is a pro sport now because all the players are multimillionaires before they even go in the NFL. Even like Caitlin Clark, the basketball player, the lady basketball player at Iowa, was a multimillionaire before she graduated from Iowa. So it's not just football, it's the other sports too, and the ladies too. And so they really need to tone down the transfers, and just one time, like they used to have to sit out a year like in the old days, just one time, not sit out a year, but that's it. And rather than have it, it's like a bus stop now. Universities are like a bus stop. Up, go, go, go. And the alums that are very loyal to their schools and never switch. I wouldn't even think of switching when I was in school. You graduate there, and that's that. So, because the alums are watching the games, and that's their schools. That's that.
Yeah, I think it's like I mentioned. It's a year to year. It's basically just like pro ball. I mean, there's free agency. I'm sure there's like under the table deals and getting promised all this. We saw earlier in the season, the UNLV quarterback went in the transfer portal in the middle of the season because he was guaranteed money and he didn't get it. UNLV ended up winning the bowl game, so shout out to the Rebels. But that's pretty much it for the show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks again. I really appreciate this 5th podcast. Really enjoyed all of them and everything. Thank you.